Welcome to Saints. Were you ready?
No, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you're rolling, but I'm not cutting back.
That's fine.
We're still welcoming you to Saints on Cinema. I am Tim Weil. We have a good group tonight. Ashley Preston-Bowden is here in the house. Literally, she's in town and she stopped by the studio to record tonight. Kirsten is joining us with her lovely pink, which looks orange hair. And Josh is there with his pink/orange face. He's getting too much sun or something. I don't know. Anyway, tonight, this morning, whenever you're watching this, we are going to have an intense and thorough and very brief discussion on the soundtrack of Hamilton. Woo! Not the soundtrack. Here's the thing. This hit Disney Plus, 3 weeks ago? It's been forever now, and we're so far behind because Josh is so hard to get a hold of.
What? I've been available the entire time. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Anyway, so it took me that long to be able to listen to it multiple times to even understand what the story is, because we know how well I follow plot. And this is a very long and complicated story with a lot of beats, a lot of excitement, a lot of music that everyone loves and raves about. And I think it's okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about Alexander Hamilton. We're going to talk a little bit about Lin-Manuel and what's happening right now and how we feel about some of that stuff with the political and racist kind of stuff. And yeah, then we're going to move on with our lives because everyone else has already been talking about this. So we're just like got to get our little dig and then we can be out. Right. First of all, here's the thing. I love musicals. Josh hates musicals. And
that's not true. That's not true at all. I hate fantasy. I'm fine. I'm fine with musicals.
Okay, you don't hate them, but you don't care about them.
That's not true. What are you talking about?
Okay.
I love The Greatest Show. I like Moulin Rouge. I like Disney musicals. Like all of them.
Okay, you like Disney cartoons. Because you're a dad and your kids drive you to watch them all the time.
I love The Greatest Showman. I saw it in the theater twice. I love Moulin Rouge. It's a good one. I like Phantom of the Opera. Not a big fan of Les Mis.
Rock of Ages?
Rock of Ages, very good one. Yes, I like Rock of Ages. Yeah.
All right, fine. So you're on musicals, whatever.
I'm meh on musicals.
So have to Thunderdome this out, man.
When this first came out, the music was out. It was on Broadway, and it was a big sensation. I basically told people that Hamilton was like the 2010s biggest Broadway. Wicked was the 2000s. Rent was the 90s. I don't know what was before that, but those were like your big decade hits.
Chicago.
That wasn't a big
It was a big
decade hit. Not bigger than what Rent. That was 90s, right? No, it was 2000s.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the point. It was not bigger than Wicked.
It was not bigger than Wicked.
Right, for the decade.
No.
Anyway, this is the musical of the Wicked. And I was dating a girl. She listened to it, and she knew my favorite musical is 1776. This is probably going to be inverted when we play this. But anyway, that's my favorite musical of all time. And it's all about the Declaration of Independence and all that stuff. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, all that stuff. And the
I still find that very surprising.
What?
Like, out of all of the musicals you could pick, 1776.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it. I think it's like a requirement for everybody to see it in high school. Really? I saw it in high school like 3 times.
I never even heard of it until you.
Well,
Yep.
that's
really, I saw it in high school 3 times, literally.
With
like
all the vulgarity and everything?
Yeah.
Edited version.
It's just no, it's like every other line they're saying damn or the Lord's name in vain very furiously.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we're talking about California high school.
I was going to say, this is California. Yeah. You would not be having that played in schools in Utah. But anyway, this is the point.
Oh, the D word. What's next? Caffeinated soft drinks and soda machines?
Anyway, I love American history. I love the Revolutionary War. I love the Congress and the Founding Fathers. I love all that stuff. And then Hamilton came out, and the girl I was dating at the time said, Tim, you're going to love this musical. You have got to start listening to the music. And I tried listening to the music at one point, and I was so bored. I didn't care. I couldn't get interested in it. I didn't know what was going on, and I was not invested. I got through like 2 songs. I was like, no, I can't do this. That was years ago. And then Josh went and saw it last year, and you came and you were like, Tim, oh my gosh, Hamilton was the most amazing thing. And
it was great. fantastic. Saw it in San Francisco.
Okay, so you saw in San Francisco, you came back just raving about it. I work with a guy who he has a good friend of his who also doesn't like musicals, and he loved it. I think there's a
You say also as if you still don't think I like musicals.
apparently it's breaking. That's my theory. My theory, though, was that people that aren't huge musical fans like this, because this is my thing. And Kirsten, this is probably where you're gonna first want to strangle me through the webcam here.
Welcome to the club.
I didn't feel like Hamilton is like a play or a musical. It wasn't like a production. It felt more like a concert. And I don't know how to really explain that, but it felt like here's a rap performance, moving on. Here's another rap performance, moving on. Here's another rap performance, moving on. It didn't feel like stories and themes. Well, not themes. We'll talk about themes. But it didn't feel like the things like really went scene by scene by scene to tell an ongoing story. It was like, here's a segment of his life, and that's over. Here's a segment of his life, that's over. That was my first time when I watched it, what I thought. And it really did feel like a concert. Not a big set. It's mostly Hamilton is there. Lin-Manuel is sitting there singing his rap while everyone else is performing and doing things around him, which felt like backup dancers to like a lead performer. It didn't feel like a big play. Does that make sense? In fact, most of the cast in the background is like in the shadows for most of their scenery. Their scenes.
Everything you're saying makes zero sense to me. Zero.
Well, that's fine, and I can show some little clips right here, but I'm too lazy in the editing to do that. But I'm just saying that was my impression. It felt like more like a concert than a musical. So I wasn't like totally hooked on all that. But the music is good, right, Ashley?
The music is great.
Okay, good.
The set was amazing. Are you kidding?
The set?
The set was amazing.
There was like one staircase.
No. Okay, so when you watch
the
it,
turntable thing?
okay, more than that.
Okay.
So when you watch it, when you look at the brick walls at the very beginning, the brick walls are small, and then as you watch throughout the thing, the bricks are getting bigger and bigger, as in their goal is rising up and building up and coming to where it needs to be. There's all this like symbolism in the set, and it was amazing.
Maybe if it wasn't like so dark,
No.
I could see. I'll have to watch it again and pay attention to that.
For an appreciator of film and breaking things apart and those subtleties that people are taking in subconsciously, right? Even directors aren't always looking for blatant in your face symbolism and things like that. There's so much of that in there that I would have thought you would have been more appreciative of that.
There were things cinematically that I appreciated, like lighting, work with the lighting, work with the sound design stuff. Not sound, it's music is what it's called in a play, but like, there was things that I appreciated watching through it. I said, that was really cool. That was really cool. And I can mention a few of those, but I didn't see any brick wall. I saw some ropes dangling from some wood planks a few times and a couple of desks thrown in there here and there when you're supposed to be writing.
The ropes are even important.
Okay. News to me.
No, the ropes are because they came over on the ship.
Okay.
And so that represents the
set. That was their set, was having some ropes dangling.
The ropes and the shiplap and the bricks of like building up, and then all these things, like showing where they came from and where they're going.
Okay.
It's important.
Okay, I'm not arguing that. I didn't get that. Maybe if I saw it live, I'd get that. Kirsten, you haven't seen it live, right? You just saw it on Disney Plus for the first time. Did you see the ropes and the ships and the bricks?
It had a very scaffolding feel. First of all, that one I definitely felt it was a very unfinished, right? And that is something more blatant that you pick up on, right? And that's because that's America. America is being built.
Right.
And I did start digging into it more because I figured there was a lot that I had missed watching it once through with a constantly interrupting 9-year-old. So.
Right. I only had to pause it once when I was going through it, and I was watching it with my daughter, who insisted on watching with me, and then another friend of mine, not you, she was sitting here though. Friend of mine. And they'd already seen it twice. My daughter has seen it twice live in Salt Lake, and I think she saw it twice. And then my friend had seen it once and was excited for me to watch it. Anyway, here's the bottom line. I enjoyed it. Okay, everyone, can we get that out of the way? I liked it. Everyone's like, you didn't hate it and crap all over it. No, I enjoyed it. I was entertained by it. But would I say this is like the greatest musical of all time? No. I do have thoughts. I do have concerns. You're probably all very shocked to hear that.
Let me before you go on to that, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
How much of this is expectation based? And here's the reason why. I came in very, like, I just assumed when I went to go see it, I didn't necessarily think I was gonna like it.
Yeah.
Like I walked in and I was like, because I was the same way as you. Like everybody I'd talked to had been like, "This is the greatest musical I've ever seen in my life," and I was like, "That's not possible." You know what I mean? Like it's just not. And so I went and I was like, "All right, this is gonna be something." And I really thought too, because you know, and it's, you probably get this some in Utah, but Ashley could probably appreciate this. She's from California. Like we get inundated with like all of the political stuff even more out here. Like it's constant. Everybody's got opinions about politics, and it's very, you know, this is a very liberal state, and so you hear about like racial injustice and stuff a lot. So I was afraid that when I went and saw it, that it was just going to be a big racial injustice propaganda piece, because I literally had no idea what any of it was, other than I know that it was just the founding fathers with people with persons of color playing the parts.
Right.
So when I saw it, I was blown away how much I really enjoyed it and how well they did with the story. And I thought that, you know, because I'm kind of a history buff. Like I love the founding fathers. I've read a lot of the books that James McCullough and the different guys, I think his name James McCullough, wrote about the different founding fathers. I haven't read anything about Hamilton. And I was really interested in a lot of the character development that you think didn't happen. So like, you know, the whole story between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, seeing that play out, I thought that was really well done, like the way that they did that. So there's a lot of things I was blown away. Now you probably thought, because you love musicals and everyone was talking about musicals, that you were gonna love it, and then
I didn't want to watch it. I've been putting this off for as long as possible because I went into it not wanting to enjoy it because I'm that big of a jerk. Because it was so popular, I want to be able to be like, it's not that great. But I enjoyed it.
That's exactly what you did. Yeah.
No, I didn't. I did not. I didn't think this is amazing.
That's what you
as
said
everyone
at
else
the beginning.
feels.
At the beginning you said, and I just thought it was,
No, as a musical. I was very entertained as this
it's a
beautiful
musical.
concert.
It's kind of as the thing it's supposed to be. Oh.
All right. I enjoyed it, and I understand what you're saying. My disappointments had nothing to do with expectations going in. How everyone said it was like the most amazing thing ever.
Right.
When I saw The Lion King, that's when I was disappointed because everyone said it was the most amazing thing ever. The movie, the play, not the.
It's
Yeah.
great too. I'm out of here.
That's a whole other conversation. But I want to compare this to 1776 real quick. I don't have a DVD of this nonsense yet, but
Nonsense?
Oh man, it's getting hard.
wait till I give it the praise. Let me say my
You're just
stuff, and then we
begging
can
for
get to
negative
the.
comments on
we
our
can-
YouTube channel. That's just what
Yeah,
we're
we'll
doing.
have our first 4, right? It was Tim's hatred of Hamilton that got people to speak up. All right. So here's the thing. I love, like I said, the founding fathers and everything. My biggest, it's not even a problem. I just thought it was a little distasteful was the way they represented a few of the characters. That has nothing to do with race. I didn't mind having the immigrants theme in there with having non-Caucasians playing the main parts of the founding fathers, except for Washington or King George.
King George.
My problem was that it felt like some of them, especially Jefferson, I didn't like the way they portrayed him. And I felt like it was because they wanted Jefferson because he was a known slave owner and slave, whatever, affairs or whatever. What's the word? Alligated? Is that the word? Alligated? Not alligated.
I don't know.
Alleged. That's the word. Alleged. Anyway,
It's
it felt like,
Alligated?
it's much more than alleged. But
Well,
yeah,
just saying.
continue, Tim.
I don't want to
You're
get
gonna trace
the
their family history back to this.
Southeastern people yelling at me about this because we have so many people from the South watching our channel. I just felt like he was designated for the narrative of the story to be like the antagonist, one of them, for Hamilton, and so they had him played. And it's not that the guy was black. I loved Washington, and he was black. I loved Burr. He was awesome. But the guy that came in as Jefferson, he played him like all pimped out and kind of like like all like hip and kind of like absent because he's been gone and everything, and he's just kind of like just trying to be really cool, but he's kind of like he's not like the tool, but he's like got an agenda. I just felt like that was a little disrespectful to Jefferson. And when you watch 1776, it's a whole different personality. Yes, my thing is all these men were flawed. All these men had different ideals and life practices, including slavery, that went contrary to things they were trying to propose and things that history remembers. Oh, look, they were fighting for freedom and anti-slavery when they had their own things. And that's one thing that's coming up now is Hamilton married into a family of slave owners. And so a lot of people are trying to do the hashtag cancel Hamilton because they're like, no, it's hypocritical because he was a slave owner. He didn't live out this narrative that the play presents. I don't care about that. And I look at these characters, even in 1776, as fictitious characters in the plays that you can study and learn about them yourselves. I have great respect for Jefferson, great respect for John Adams, great respect for Washington. I don't know anything about Hamilton outside of this play, but I'm not taking this presentation as the gospel truth. You know what I'm saying? It's
not presented in that way from my take, and it's not a historically accurate. It's like when people watch The Greatest Showman, they were like, that guy was a jerk and this play had him be like this amazing man. I'm like, this wasn't like a history documentary, this was a musical.
Right, I agree with that, and I felt the same way about Greatest Showman. I just felt that there was a little bit of disrespect presented about some of them, particularly Jefferson.
Well, I think
that's whitewashed opinion.
I was gonna say I think the difference between this and 1776 is that 1776 was kind of about everybody. This one's specifically about Hamilton, and I think it's about Hamilton from his own perspective, right? So in his perspective, Jefferson was the enemy. Like they had opposing views, they were from opposing parties. It was historically accurate, the stuff that they were talking about Alexander Hamilton being presented with this affair and him writing that letter. All of that was historically accurate. And so if you're looking at it from Alexander Hamilton's perspective, being the hero of his own story, Jefferson would be a pompous, arrogant enemy to him. So, I mean, I think that's probably why there's a different perspective there. You know, same with like Greatest Showman, right? Like in Greatest Showman, if you look at it from P.T. Barnum, from his perspective, he probably thought he was a great guy, you know, even though he wasn't, but in his mind he was, right? So,
and
even with Jefferson, in the books I've read, so America's First Daughter is all about his daughter and everything that she went through. And honestly, I read that and I hated him. Yeah. I was like, you were a jerk.
Right.
You know, and like, I mean, like he had his moments where like, okay, I like you again, but no, now you're being a jerk again. And like, he just, so I
get that. And like I said, they were all very flawed. They were dirty men. You know, they all had various moral things that if they had social media back then, they would have all been canceled, you know, because that's what we do. But I don't know. I just felt like the approach and the message that was trying to be portrayed in this show was all about, look, immigrant, this is American history told through other colors, right? This is a diverse cast presenting the founding fathers. I didn't feel like it was all specifically Hamilton. I thought I was trying to tell. I see what you're saying, Josh. I'll take that as a point. But I just think in presenting it, I think you should take a little bit of responsibility, because in 1776, and I talked about this, you have Rutledge. Yeah, you have Rutledge, who is the guy from North or South Carolina, I can't remember. He has an entire song about slavery, about pro-slavery, and it's a very passionate and it's a very powerful, moving song, and it's disgusting to listen to because it's so effective. But even those characters that are promoting slavery in the Congress, you still can see this is their culture, this is their way of life, this is their perspective, and you have a little bit of respect for them in the story, even though they are the enemies of the Declaration of Independence in the play. I just felt like you could have made Jefferson out to be and the person against Hamilton in those scenes, especially in the Congress and everything, without painting him as such an idiot. I felt he was kind of an idiot.
I don't think he was painted as an idiot at all. I think he was just
A
painted
clown.
As
He was like a clown.
Not like a clown. We're just kind of like
No, he wasn't a clown. I didn't think that. I think that he was portrayed.
He was all pimped out.
Well, he was a big deal.
It's,
I mean,
it's
he
an
did
artistic.
the Declaration. Didn't he write? He wrote the Declaration of Independence, so kind of a big deal
right.
to everybody, right?
And
I
those
mean-
kinds of things really matter to him. Materialistic things really matter to him.
Right, and all this stuff was like post. All the stuff with Jefferson was post Declaration of Independence, so it's like it moved right past the really important thing that he contributed, went right into here's how he was kind of a jerk in Congress. But anyway, that's
Well,
just
because the story isn't about Jefferson; it's about him.
I know it is, but I'm just saying. I think even in telling that story, I mean, you could say 1776 is all about John Adams. I know it's the.
It's
Congress,
clear
but
you've got
Adams.
favoritism towards him, so you're upset that he
Oh
wasn't
my
cast
gosh.
in a perfect light.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Get it.
Thomas Jefferson is your Luke Skywalker of the founding fathers.
Right out loud. No,
You're like, I don't like what they did with Jefferson. This
that's
show
not
is
what I'm
stupid.
saying. I just felt like. Anyway, I don't think you guys are getting my point. Anyway, this is not about I love Thomas Jefferson. I've been to Monticello. I've been there. I saw where the slaves and the graves and the plantation. I was like, oh yeah, he clearly had slaves. It's all over the place. I was like, I saw it, and it's kind of cool to see. But I was like, yeah, he wasn't the character that I saw in 1776. And I understand that was an artistic expression of the character, and that was for that narrative of that story. I just felt like the narrative of this story had a little bit of disrespect for them. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have it. So let's talk about any other bad things.
You are totally entitled to your wrong opinion.
My wrong opinion. Does anyone else have any things that they didn't like? Is everyone just so, oh, it's the most amazing thing ever, and Tim's crazy?
I in both the play and in the movie, I felt it was really hard to follow Lafayette, the French guy in the first half.
When you say,
Because
oh, go ahead.
when he's speaking, the way the guy who played him was very, very prolific in the art of rapping, and he was very quick, and so because of that and the heavy accent, and it wasn't just him, because it was a different person, I believe, who played it in San Francisco, and I had the same problem there, was that it's just, he goes so fast and he uses the accent that it's really hard to follow most of the stuff that he's saying. And I think also, like, I was much more interested the second time because I was able to follow it a little bit better than I could the first time, because I'd already seen it once, so I knew it was coming, and I had a better sense of following it. I actually thought about watching it with subtitles, just so that way I could catch all the words as I was doing
Gotta
it.
speed read.
Yeah, right. And so, and I let my kids watch it with me too, and so I felt like they probably were lost. But at the end, they all even had comments and thought it was good and everything too. So they've probably followed it better than I did.
Cool. Is there anything you didn't like, Ashley?
No, I liked it. I just like, I mean, it wasn't like the greatest music ever, but your whole thing, how you felt like it was like a concert opposed to an actual musical. It's a modern day musical.
Okay.
So you have the two musicals, like kind of like Oklahoma, where they break out into song, and then they have like their storyline that's done through like words. But
Okay.
then modern day, it's all through the lyrics for you to follow along.
Did you guys ever watch the Les Mis, the concert that they did? It was like the 25th anniversary or whatever, and
Yeah.
they did the concert, and they were
Yeah.
just there in costume singing to the audience.
It was beautiful.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's what this felt like.
Mhm.
It didn't feel like it was actually the production with a real set. It was in real choreography and blocking and stuff.
Set. Ooh, he's really throwing out fighting words today.
I know.
A real set, you said.
No, I'm just saying. I know this show wasn't about that. It was about the focus on the characters. Okay, but I mean, every play is like that. And sometimes you have too much going on in the background and everything with background
Distracts
dancers.
focus.
You don't know where you're supposed to look because there's so much cool stuff happening. Les Mis is like that, but
Right.
this one it felt more like the concert. And whatever, that's not a criticism. That's just how it came out. I know some people are talking about this should be
Sounds like criticism.
oh, whatever. So that just goes with, I enjoy the music. I enjoy some of the themes. I just didn't feel like it's like the most amazing musical ever, but whatever. I'm always the wrong person in that. I don't care. But everyone's talking about how this should be like, it's so big and so amazing that this should be like up for like an Academy Award. I'm like, this is not Academy Award.
No.
It's not
I
a
don't agree.
movie. It's
I
not
don't agree with. I don't necessarily agree with that.
that it should or shouldn't.
I don't agree that it should. I mean, a couple of reasons why. One, it's not a movie, it's a recording of the play. I mean, so it's never meant to be a movie. It shouldn't get an Academy Award on that grounds alone. Okay, like otherwise any musical or any Broadway play can just throw up a camera and then put it on a streaming service and be eligible for an Academy Award. So I don't think that should happen at all. If they, I would actually really like them to make. I think it'd be cool to have them do a movie production of this, similar to the way like Phantom and Les Mis has done.
Right.
I think that's really
Some
cool
people
too.
really hated those movie productions.
No, I'm not saying those productions were.
I had concerns.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I like those productions, but I think they could do a pretty cool movie production, especially considering that the sets were fairly simple, so it wouldn't.
Right.
It would rely much more heavily on the acting.
That's
like
exactly what I said was, and I told my daughter and my friend, I was like, look, if they did a real production of this with live action and sets and everything, and they filmed this like Phantom of the Opera or whatever, I would enjoy that way more as a as a production versus just the music. And this I got the music, because okay, I'm just gonna say it right now, and everyone's gonna hate me for this. I don't think Lin-Manuel's a very good performer.
No.
Oh, thank you.
He wasn't the strongest singer. I mean, he's fine.
He's passable, and he's the one that can do the rapping. I had to go talk to some friends of mine that are students or musical or theater students. They have degrees and stuff, and asked them about the production. And I asked, he wrote it. Mm-hmm. He wrote the music. He didn't orchestrate it, because if he had done that, oh my gosh! And then if he directed it, wow, this is just the most amazing passion project ever for him. But he didn't. It was produced, and the producers wanted him to perform because after In the Heights is the other one he did. Is that what it's called? In the Heights, I think. They knew he could do it, and some of the other cast members were pulled from there because they could follow through with the rapping stuff. So he was the one that was designated to be the best person to do that performance. I felt watching this whole thing, I could not connect emotionally to some of the scenes because I don't feel like Lin-Manuel's a great performer. Amazingly talented, an incredible rapper, incredible writer. He's a genius. He's very passionate. He's a very lovable, and he's I don't mean like charisma. I mean, he cares about people. He cares about immigration. He cares about diversity. All that stuff is amazing about him. However, I don't think he can hold a straight face. He always has this like almost I'm about to smile in almost every scene. I can put up some images here. And I told my ex-wife that. She's like, you're crazy. I thought he had amazing range. I'm like, I don't think he does. And I was trying to get emotional, like when his son died. Right. She was there, the girl that played Liza. She was just like, pulling the emotions and the weight. And like, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to cry for her performance. And he's just there I was like, okay, I can't do better, but I'm just saying, I didn't feel like he was doing anything different in any scene. I really didn't. He was passionate in some scenes, which I like, but I couldn't really pull in. I would love to see this performance with a different cast. Everyone else is fine, but just, him doing it. And again, props to him. This is his project, and it's amazing. It's an incredible piece of work, and he deserves all the credit he gets. I just don't think he's a great performer. And then I went back and watched Mary Poppins Returns to see if it was just crazy. No, he acts and looks and has the same expressions on Mary Poppins Returns as he did in this. I'm like, well, okay. I'm not, that's it.
Who he is.
That's it. And yeah, that's all it is.
That's interesting, because as you were talking,
you zoned out and you're like, Tim just doesn't have anything.
No, for like a really long time. I was thinking to myself, I was like, I think I did like the Hamilton in the play that I saw better. And I certainly liked the King George in the San Francisco play better. He was fantastic. He was my favorite character. But I don't know how much, because now that I'm thinking about it, I enjoyed the play production so much better than the movie. Okay. But I wonder how much of that was just the fact that I was there
in person. Yeah, like that's a big difference. Yeah, big difference.
So I mean, this is meant to be a play, right?
Yeah.
So I mean,
I guess, or a concert.
Pinch him. You're right there. Pinch him.
So I don't know. I think it was I did like some of the characters better, but I just in the play, like the actors, but I think maybe it was just because it was the first time I'd seen it. So I don't know.
Let's talk about some of the characters. Let's hammer through a few characters. I just want to talk about a couple of themes, and then we can wrap up. Okay, well, Hamilton, whatever. He's a fictitious character in this. I mean, I'm not saying he's a fictitious. I'm not that guy that doesn't believe in him as an actual person in history. But this portrayal of him, I'm not like. I didn't watch this. I'm like, he's my new hero. I gotta go read everything and collect $10 bills and hang them up on my wall because he's my new idol. No, because this is not necessarily who he was. This is who he was in this production. Go ahead.
Based on his biography that Lin-Manuel got in the Caribbean.
I know. I saw the book. Anyway, but even that, this is the thing about that. So this was inspired by the book because I watched an interview with him.
Yeah.
So you have documents from American history that are portrayed in a book and then adapted into a play. So everyone this is Alexander Hamilton. This is an adaptation of a commentary on some historical notes. I'm like, this is like third stages of information.
You're saying it's kind of like telephone?
Kind of.
Okay.
And I'm just saying this to interpretation. That's what I'm saying. And there's factual stuff, but there's a lot of stuff about him. Not a lot. I don't know a lot about him, but the little things I've heard and why some people are getting so upset right now, because there's little details that they omitted. So if people are watching this, oh, he's the most ideal, passionate, perfect founding father.
He wasn't portrayed perfect even in this, I think.
No, he definitely was not. No.
I mean, people that looked at him historically didn't feel like that this narrative really tells a very accurate, fulfilled portrayal of who he was in real life, mostly for the slave stuff. But again, I'm not jumping on that cancel Hamilton thing. I think all that stuff is outrageous. Just like I don't like Greatest Showman because it's an accurate portrayal of P.T. Barnum. It's a fictitious character in this play. John Adams in 1776 is a fictitious character in that play. This is what I'm like. I like Hamilton in the play, but that doesn't mean I love Alexander Hamilton as the founding father. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I can see what you're saying.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's not at all who they present him as. I'm just saying some people are really naive and this has got to be 100% fact and this is all there is to know about him. Well, careful with who you select as your heroes, unless you're looking at him this is Robin Hood. Oh, he's a fictitious character. This is my hero. If Alexander Hamilton's your hero, you might want to do some research and make sure he is really your hero. I'm not saying he shouldn't be your hero. I'm just saying don't go off just this play and be like, that's the guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So if we're talking about characters, I thought the most interesting character was Aaron Burr.
Yes.
I mean,
His voice was so dreamy.
I fell in love with Leslie Odom Jr. when I saw him in Smash. There was a TV series, and it was amazing. It was about it was all about Broadway, how you get in, and they created a Broadway about Marilyn Monroe, and it was amazing. The whole series.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I fell in love with him in there, and he's so talented. You didn't like him?
I don't know. No, Burr, yeah. I
Okay.
didn't see all this smashing stuff you were talking
No.
about.
I'm just saying, I fell in love with him there. So when I saw that he was in this, that's what got me excited to actually see him.
Good.
Because I have an interest.
I liked him a lot. I love his scenes. So when I bought this CD from Barnes & Noble, this is the full version, whatever it is, the unabridged, is it? I don't know. It's 2 discs. I bought it from Barnes & Noble, and the girl checking me out, she was like, oh, you're buying it. Have you seen it before? I'm like, no. She's like, have you heard the music? I said, no. She's like, you're going to love it. I said, what's your favorite song? And she was kind of cute. I was just talking to her. And then she
was checking you out?
Wah, wah.
We were checking each other out, but one of them was professional, and the other was, anyway. She said her favorite song was Wait For It. And so I went out and I YouTubed Wait For It before I went back to next time I went into the store. Because I didn't open this till just now. I just opened this because I never went to listen to it because I didn't care about the music, even though I bought this because it was on sale. But I liked Wait For It, and that was the coolest song.
He still buys CDs in person, you guys. He still buys CDs, first of all.
Yes. Do you want to see my CD or my cassette tape collection? They're over there. Is there not cassette tapes right there?
Oh, there is.
Yeah. Anyway, I like that song. I like him, and I don't feel like he was the villain in the story, even though he was kind of he was kind of the opposition for Hamilton throughout it, but it never felt like there was anything that Hamilton was struggling with because of Burr. Unless I need to really watch the second act a lot or more carefully, but from what I remember, most of it was like he was bitter because Alexander Hamilton was always on top. Wasn't that kind of the theme? Until the very end, and that's what triggered him, tipped him over the edge, was like he didn't endorse him at the very end, so he's like, that's it, and that was the end.
And I can just understand why. I mean, what a jerk move. Like, you know, he had, at least as it was portrayed in the book and in the movie, that him and Aaron Burr knew each other basically like their whole lives, and it looked like Aaron Burr had kind of like took him under his wing when he really didn't have anybody. And then he just goes and turns on him. I'd have shot him too.
I felt like he had to stand up, that it was an integrity move, but I felt the same thing. I was like, ugh, like when he did it, it's like, oh no.
When he went for Jefferson?
When he,
What he said, Jefferson believes in something Burr does not. And that came out in the very first interaction, at least in the play. I don't know about history. I don't care. I'm not talking about the history. I'm talking about the play. In the first conversation, he said, if you don't stand for something, what will you fall for, or whatever. And at the very end, when he said I would endorse Jefferson, it's because he believes in something Burr doesn't.
Right.
And that came up several times through many songs. And you know what? That was Hamilton's whole point. You got to speak up. You got to.
But think about it, though. I mean, my goodness, Thomas Jefferson blackmailed him with an affair.
He didn't know
like basically. No, but what I'm saying is he brought it to his attention to threaten to blackmail him to get something political. Hamilton, at least, suggested that the reason he never became president was because that came out. And then he endorsed the guy who ruined his political career over Aaron Burr.
Okay.
Like,
yes, on a personal level, I 100% agree. Like as people, if it wasn't job reasons, if that makes sense, or like you said, political reasons, where he's going, who's best for this position, I 100% agree. Like as a person, personally, yeah, that was a total jerk move.
Yeah.
So here I am defending Hamilton, right? Guys, that's what was cool about this fictitious character, was that he believed so much in the country and so much in the changes, and he valued who was in the presidency was so important that he wanted to not endorse the person he had loyalty to or he had friendships with and this long-term history with, someone he might even know could handle the job. Jefferson, who disagreed with him about so many things, he still, I think there's some lyrics in there that portray that, he still knew that there were some good values that Jefferson was going to uphold and push for. And he's like, I have to promote and endorse the person that has something to believe, not just to fill the job. I think that was completely true to everything that Hamilton had done. The entire play was just rise up, right? That's the whole thing.
Right. And it's like you said, he's just living by his core value. Like,
yes, that's it.
The whole time he's talking about, like, you have to believe in something.
Be true to yourself.
And so that's all it was. I don't think it was at a personal level.
To the point that he believed in that so much, he threw his friend under the bus. And that friend turned around and shot him. And I was like, wow, that's a dramatic turn, and he died. And that's the whole thing. You gotta believe in something, or what else are you gonna fall for? That's what he fell for. He died to endorse Jefferson, who was a very contrary man in his experience with it in Congress and everything. Disagreed on almost everything. That was one of Jefferson's lyrics, if I remember. They disagreed on almost everything, but he believed in him so much. It's just like the presidency, we're not going to talk about current politics or anything, but, if you have someone you vote for, it shouldn't be because they're a certain party or whatever. It should be that you believe in what they believe in. You know what I mean? And not about necessarily history or their personal lives or anything. There's asterisks on that. It's a whole nother conversation. But, if you believe in what they believe in for that job, and he died for that, I think that's admirable. I think that was a really cool end to the play. P.S. That was one of the coolest scenes, was how they did the shootout at the very end when he stopped. It went all slow motion. She's carrying the bullet and all that stuff. Oh, it was so beautiful. I was like, I wish I had a different person playing Hamilton so I could have cried at that moment, but I didn't. I was like, Tim, you're gonna cry. No, not even close. But it was really beautiful, really well done. Anyway, I like that. I like Hamilton. I like Burr, and I love their interaction. Speaking of the lyrics, the Burr Sir combinations they do in those lyrics, I love that. From that very first time that they first met, I love the mix up of the Burr Sir, and then they did it with Washington, and it kept going back and forth. I thought it was really cool. I enjoy and appreciated the lyrics a lot. Anything else on Burr? Do we care? Are we good?
Good on Burr.
Kirsten, who's your favorite character?
Yeah.
Other than Hamilton?
I think I would need to watch it again. Just a nice, thorough, straight watch through by myself.
Not
no
your
interruptions. Dude, I know. Bless his little heart. But he did have an interesting take about villains. Now, you had mentioned you felt like Burr was the main, kind of villain.
Kind of the antagonist.
A 9-year-old's antagonist, right? And a 9-year-old's term the villain, because it's that simple for that level, But I really appreciated, and I'm sure there's more in depth than Ashley might know, but there are so many, quote, villains or antagonists. You've got the King, you've got Thomas Jefferson, you have Aaron Burr, but Aaron Burr is just, as they always show him, around. He's around him, but he's not a direct, until of course they're finally lined up directly across from each other in the duel.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to pick and think who is the bad guy. My child decided, because of the infidelity aspect, that it was actually Hamilton. That was his come away.
He's the bad guy.
It was like, he's the bad guy. And I was like,
You're like, yeah, that's
They're all dirty men.
it was so interesting. And there's another line from another play that I use with him as a learning point all the time, and it's from Into the Woods. That's one of my favorites. But I said, there's a difference between nice and good. You know how we say that? And I said, bad people can do nice things, but good people can also make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard to tell the difference between the two. And you have to maybe weigh if someone did more good versus bad. And so we reflected on the play to decide if he thought, did Hamilton do more good than bad and stuff like that. But it's interesting to look at.
I liked about it though, because just like that, it's like real life. Like everyone is a part of everything, and everyone has like this balance act. But like in movies, they make it very obvious in lots of instances of who is good and bad, but like that's not real life.
That's how you portray a villain and a hero in a story. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when you take these real life characters, and then you have these artistic expressions of them and interpretations. They're very much interpretations. You gotta take that with a grain of salt. There's, you gotta really think about who they really were if you really want to adore these men as men. Otherwise, you're just looking at a character in a play, just like it could be John McClane from Die Hard. That's my hero. He's not a real guy. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Serious?
He's not my hero.
No, he's not real.
No, he's not real. Did you watch the 3rd or 4th or 5th movie or 6th movie, whatever they're on now? Anyway.
If you're trying to tell me that he couldn't take out a helicopter with a truck.
That's totally real. No.
That's real. That could happen.
Exaggerated stories after the first 2 movies, which were real life stories. Anyway, that's the thing I like about Burr too, with what you're talking about, Kirsten, is they were around each other and they weren't always against each other. And like when they talk about when they opened up their law firms right next door and stuff, he went to Burr for help. When Burr was trying to present himself to be the right-hand man to Washington dismissed him, and he had already summoned Alexander. He dismissed Burr. He already invited Alexander Hamilton. Like, he didn't do anything. He hesitated to even take the job, But it's like, but Burr just always was getting just nudged aside and always just undercut every little time. But it wasn't intentional, wasn't deliberate, and that's why I thought that the climax was really effective because of that. Because all these things for their whole lifetime, and sometimes they got along, sometimes they disagreed, but it all came out to an unfolding of Hamilton standing up for what he believed in. I thought that was really cool. What about the King? Do we care about how King George was presented? I thought he was fun. That's the guy from, I didn't realize this, so my friend pointed out. What?
He's from Frozen.
Oh, I don't care about Frozen.
Oh.
He was from Glee. He was the one kid from Glee, which he was
You care about Glee more than Frozen?
Yeah.
I'm actually yes, and I didn't watch all of Glee, but I fell asleep during Frozen. But I have thoughts about Frozen. Well, let's not get into it. Anyway, he was he's an amazing performer, and I loved him in Glee for the few episodes he was in. After we watched it, I showed Mara, my daughter, this awesome when they did Bohemian Rhapsody, and he was the main singer. Oh my gosh, I love that performance, so awesome. Anyway, he was fun. Jefferson, he's fine. Just the performance fine.
Well, I thought King George. So the San Francisco play, the King George stood out so well. He played it so much better than the guy in the original cast.
But he was still played as kind of a tool, right?
Huh?
He was still played as kind of a tool, just kind of a dork.
Oh yeah, he was still played in kind of a flamboyant, feminine way like he was, and all that. But just the way his mannerisms, the way he played it, it was so funny. And so I liked him. But I also, another one of my favorite characters is Eliza. I think that the actor, in both of the play and the film that I saw, the dynamic between Alexander and Eliza, from the very beginning of it, seemed clear that he really wanted to marry the sister, not Eliza, and that part of it, and then the affair, and then trying to rectify the affair and doing all those things, and then her the son being killed. Like, what an amazing performance. Like, I think she just did such a great job. And when
Eliza,
she was,
you're talking about?
when
Or
she was,
Angelica?
huh?
You're talking about Eliza or Angelica, or just
Which one was the one he's actually married to?
Eliza's
Eliza.
his wife.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Angelica's the
Eliza.
one that he
Right.
loved. Yeah.
Right.
Who had
So
a pair.
Eliza.
They forgot about that.
Yeah. And that song that she sings when she's burning.
The narrative, removing
Yeah.
yourself from the narrative.
Right.
Yeah. Remember
Oh,
the-
good.
So good in that.
I was like everyone in the world knows their story now. Everything was aired, all their laundry was aired on Facebook, and she's
Right.
like, you know what? I'm blocking everyone. I'm taking myself off of social media. I'm removing myself from the narrative. I just want to live my own life.
Right.
And I thought that was like,
no one's gonna know what she said to him about that.
and then by the end of it, she had to put herself back in. As I understand, that's where she had to go and do all this research for years after Hamilton died to collect all these letters and everything he wrote. She talks about that in the final song.
Right.
How she was pulling all this information, trying to learn who her husband was. And she was trying, talked about in that song too, that she was trying to make sense of it by reading through his words and everything. Who was my husband?
Right.
How could this have happened? And then by the end of it, she's like, I really need to pull the story together and put myself back in the narrative, own up to who I was in his life, and share it, because he had a lot more to give than just this affair.
Right.
Again,
Well, the interesting about that is that would make sense too, because he was gone all the time creating the country. So,
a lot of those men were.
Yeah.
He probably didn't spend a lot of time
Yep.
at home. Country building is a big thing.
Yep.
You should try it sometime,
that.
Tim.
So let's talk. I want to talk real quick about those two songs. The what is it? Helpless.
Yeah.
Where you first, not the introduction of the sisters, but where they're at the party or the ball or whatever, and then the sister introduces Eliza. Angelica introduces Hamilton to Eliza, and she's I'm gonna change your life forever. He's like, well, by all means, or whatever.
Yeah.
That song, and then it goes into the courtship, him asking permission from the father, leading up into their recording and everything, and it's all from Eliza's point of view.
Right.
And then it goes up to the wedding, and then it stops.
And
Next song, and they do that rewind part. That was so cool. How they do the music, it went like backwards, and the choreography. All the dancers were like going backwards and then freezing. And then you go through that whole scene again with Angelica's point of view, and she was singing Unsatisfied. Is that what it was?
And that song was amazing.
Yes, it was. Holy cow. I thought that was so, like, right when they did the rewind part, I was like, that was freaking cool. I almost paused it just to revel in that for a moment, but I thought that was so effective. And then you tell this whole story again from her perspective, and the whole thing that's her song is that she's never going to be happy that she let him go. This might have been the biggest mistake of her life, introducing him to her sister, that she would never get the chance.
And she was doing what she felt was her duty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she says throughout, especially later on,
Right.
when the affair becomes revealed, she says, my sister's happiness is more important than my own, and it always will be.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. Angelica was a really cool character for that whole thing, even though they had an affair. But like, she's like, no. And because he even said after the affair was public, he said, you'll understand what I'm going through more than anyone because we had an affair, you know, but she's like, no. You hurt my sister. You betray my sister. That's more important to me. Ah, so good. Ashley, you have a sister?
I do.
And you're really close to her.
I am.
How do you love those sister songs?
Love them.
Okay.
Good talk, guys.
Good talk. I was moved by that. I really was. And when it came out later on, like the dialogue later on, when things got real in the like towards the end of the play, I thought the sisterhood was really well founded. It was really well established. I was really impressed by that. And the music was so cool for those two songs. Eliza was awesome. Can we talk about the end?
Peggy's just there. I was thinking about that. She's just, and I'm sure that's probably, I'm assuming historically Peggy was a person, so maybe they felt the need to like her to be there, but there's no real function that I picked up on.
And she didn't even sing. Like her lines, they're just words.
And Peggy or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like mopey.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like which is fine, but
she wasn't.
What you're saying is like she
story,
really wasn't. Maybe they needed extra fillers for the measures or something. Just throw in the other stuff.
Possible.
I just wanted to acknowledge her, but the story was with the other two.
Right.
She was really good. When her son died, that was gripping.
Yeah.
That, by the way, that cinematography and the lighting and stuff, and when he's like frozen, when he gets shot, and the impact him going backwards, and then the lighting on the guy who killed him, he like disappeared into the light. Oh, it was so cool. I love the shootouts. I love how they did that stuff. The duels, really cool, and that was a lot of fun. I liked how they did the duels. They do it 3 times. Mm-hmm. The first time where Burr in Hamilton, right? Or was it?
No, they were the second.
They were the no, I know they were the lieutenants, right? But was it Burr or was it the other guy?
No, Burr and Hamilton were just the
lieutenants. Yeah. In the first one, then it was his son, and then it was the in Hamilton. And I like because the setup for the son, if the rules aren't established previously, then that doesn't really connect. And then what happens at the very end, you know, that's a lot more dramatic because you've already seen it not work the first time, and then
and there was 2 men who actually valued the rules and the tradition of it, where with the son was trying to value because his father taught him to value those traditions, but the guy he was with was like, I don't care. You know?
And he told his son, you did everything right. Anyway, that was the part. The story beat was really emotional. Performance didn't get. Anyway, I love that. I love that song. We mentioned Wait For It. I love that song. I love how Burr's whole thing was like, there's a reason I'm still surviving. And in that time, during the middle of that war and everything, and Washington even said a line to Hamilton. He said, you know, anyone can be a martyr. Being a martyr is easy, but living is much harder. And so Burr is like surviving, and all these things have happened. His family and everyone's gone. And he's like, I was an orphan. And he's like, there's a reason for this, and I'm going to wait to know what my purpose is. That theme ties in so well with Hamilton's theme when the other guy dies, and the guy that died before he freed all the last battalion or whatever, all the blacks. And then Hamilton snaps, and he's like, I have a lot of work to do. And then he just goes on this crusade to start writing the legislature and all the essays and everything. Right. And then they sing that song that I love. Is that the song Nonstop? Where they're writing, like he's writing like he's running out of time? That song? Wait. I love that. I think that was the one. But he starts writing like he has all this work to do, but he's all this stuff that he has in him, he's trying to get out. And that just reminds me of my life, where I'm like, there's all these projects, there's books I want to work on, there's video essays I want to do, there's lectures I want to share, there's insights in books and scriptures and fiction that I want to compile and have available. And there's just things that I believe in and I dream of, and I'm like, you know what? If I don't work on these things, I'm gonna be gone at some point with all this stuff not done. And it always reminds me of the quote that comes out in General Conference quite a bit, where they say, oh, you don't want to die with your music in you. Where if you have a score or a composition or something that you have in you to write, you want to get that out before you die. You don't want to pass away without having come out or shared whatever you have to create. And I thought all the things he was trying to contribute to Congress and to history and to America and rewrite in the new Congress and everything and liberate the slaves or whatever. All that work he was like hustling to do, and everyone, the perspective of all that with everyone. I love that song. And that went along with Burr, where Burr's like, wait, you gotta wait for your purpose. I'm gonna still wait to see what I'm here for. It's cool.
It is cool.
So cool. Right, Josh? It's cool.
It's fantastic. It's so cool. It's like just
Awesome.
nice, just like having fabric softener on your stuff when it comes out of the laundry. Just all nice and just soft, and I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Anyway, can we talk about Washington? Who loves Washington?
I like the Washington in the movie more than I did in my play. Yeah, he was really good, really powerful.
Chris Jackson.
And I love, so from what I understand, when they filmed this, they filmed it once with an audience, and then they filmed it twice with just on stage without an audience, so they could zoom in and have the camera angles directed so they can capture the things that they wanted to.
It was more than that.
Twice with an audience, once without for all those close-up angles.
But when Washington comes out, the audience explodes, and I love that they cut those moments in there where some of the jokes they had to land, and some of the characters come out, like the King George when he comes out. But when Washington comes out, the audience erupts because they love it. And then his song at the end when he's retiring, whatever, when he's passing on, and that's the other theme I love, is the history has its eyes on you.
Right.
When he's passing it over to Hamilton and he's gonna go back to Vermont, because his whole thing is like, if the entire country is devoted and following and converted to me, it's not gonna last after I leave. And that's kind of the same way as with missionaries. Missionaries, you need to be converted to the gospel, not to the missionary. You can't have the missionary be the focus. And so Washington stepping out at that time was passing of the torch. And then King George sings his song. He's like, yeah, without Washington, you guys are nothing. And then they talk about John Adams. But I like that. I like how he comes out strong and he goes out with like a flame. Love it. But that song, what is the name of My Shot. We talk about My Shot. When Hamilton's singing about his shot, and then he's enlisted in the war. He's only 19 years old, if I remember right. And then Washington's going through the battle. He comes out and he's singing about how they're outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned, whatever it is. And they're low. And we know that's statistical and historical from the Revolutionary War. We were way outnumbered, but it was the passion and the strategy of Washington and those leaders that helped us fight, and some assistance from other countries, which comes up later. But a transition, that's what I love about the themes, how they bounce back and forth. It's almost like a chiasm, how you have the My Shot, how Hamilton's like, I don't care, no matter what, I'm going to do whatever I have to do my part. And this is my dream, I'm going to take my shot. And then Washington comes out and the Rise Up song, and then all the boom with the boom
cannon
with the lights and all that stuff was so cool. And then he calls him in to give him his job. He doesn't want to be a secretary, and then it goes back to the echoing of My Shot, and then that comes in, and he's like, and he's gonna rise up, and then it climaxes with the My Right Hand Man part. That was so cool. I can only say that's so cool so many times, right, Josh? Wasn't that so cool? How those themes all came together for that cool combination, introducing Washington. Just a yes.
Just amazing. Just like the scene when Han Solo when Luke Skywalker just like throws his lightsaber, like it was that cool. So
all right, wrapping up. All right.
I already said it, but the song that they had, I don't remember the names of the songs because I don't have the CD sitting right next to me.
Well, I wrote down the few I wanted to talk about. Which one are you talking about, though? I might know.
One where he is singing with Eliza. I thought the imagery there after the affair, I think it was even after the son had passed away, when they're reconciling, basically.
Yeah.
The imagery there I thought it was really amazing, and it was a good song. Unlike you, I actually thought the music was great.
I like the music. Am I not talking about how great the music was?
No, okay. But anyway, so I just thought it was just a different perspective. I was not, like I said, I was not expecting to like it. and I really did. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a huge rap fan. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I do like rap. I listen to some stuff, you know, mainly 90s gangster rap on DMC, but still listening to it, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting to see a different perspective, the way that it was portrayed. And Lin-Manuel, you talked about how he was getting, you know, the political aspect of this is, you know, there's this cancel Hamilton type stuff. Lin-Manuel himself actually responded and said, yeah, like, this is a conversation that needs to be had.
Yep.
Because he purposely left certain things out, because he was like, I'm trying to cram as much information as I can into a play of 2.5 hours, and there's some things that we just can't touch on, and these were things that we didn't feel like should have been touched on at this time, but that's definitely a conversation that we should have. And I think that was an exact way to, I think that was a very good way to address the issue.
He also pointed out that the audience that the play was introduced to 5 years ago, whatever, 6 years ago, whatever it was, is a very different world than the audience that the show was introduced to in the world now with Disney Plus. Everything is different from what it was 5 years ago, and so the audience, how their reception and what the topics and conversation are going to be are completely different. He's not hiding behind or ashamed of what he presented. It's how it feels. I can't speak for him, but it really feels like he's like, no, you're right. And just like you said, Josh, you said this is a conversation, but we weren't being insensitive because everything was different 5 years ago. It's worth having that conversation now, but it doesn't take away from this was the piece of art that we were sharing. And so I think this whole cancel Hamilton thing is just ridiculous, because if they're like, oh, it's not
so much for diversity and representation. I mean, yes, things were left out, but there were so many details that I was just trying to absorb watching it too. I mean, from the neck up, everybody had modern hairstyles. People didn't even look like they were wearing makeup. Hair was natural. People weren't wearing wigs. That's really cool.
Yeah.
You know, you see little girls on TV go, that's me.
Yeah.
Because we have such whitewashed Broadway, whitewashed Hollywood. There's not that representation for so many Black people and people of color, and I think that was such a beautiful cast, and people deserve more of that. So I love that he's willing to have that conversation and said that, and that was so beautifully said, as was pointed out. And I don't think you can take away from what it did and what this play represents too.
No, and that's the whole message. And regardless of historical accuracy, it's all about, let's think about things and let's appreciate things and let's live a little bit better than the way things were back then. And the whole thing is pointing out issues in people's personal lives, issues in politics back then, and issues in the reality of what life was like back then, especially for Blacks. You know what? As we're sharing this as in a story being told by several Blacks and other races, let's have that discussion. Let's share and let's learn together and move forward. That's kind of how it feels in this. Not about, you know, here's how perfect Alexander Hamilton was, and we're going to hide and sweep under the rug certain aspects of his life to tell this lovely, fluffy little narrative that Josh loves. Anyway.
Well, okay, hold on. I do want to say something on that. And that is that I know that today the choices that Lin-Manuel made would probably be different because of the time we're living in now.
Sure.
But at the same time, I did appreciate that I mean, there were references to slavery, and there were references to immigration, and there were references to those things. And I thought that they were very well placed when they put them in there. But I did appreciate that they didn't have a giant piece of this be a discussion of slavery. And I think the reason why I appreciate that is because I understand that all of them had major character flaws. Major. I mean, I understand Thomas Jefferson, while at one time protesting slavery, also owned slaves. Like, you're not protesting, but like was against slavery, and he still owned slaves. I mean, you know, so I get that. But the thing is you have to understand, and this is just my view, and maybe it's an ignorant view because I haven't lived it. I understand that. Like, I know I'm not a Black man. Clearly, you know, I get a sunburn opening up the fridge. So, but like,
I hear you. Gingers unite.
Right, exactly. but the thing is that like these people, you have to understand these people in the context of the world that they are living in.
Right.
At that time, it's not like America was the only place that had slavery at the time. It was a way of life. It was an unfortunate way of life. It was a terrible way of life. It was absolutely grotesque that it happened. But despite the major character flaws, the ideals that they were presenting, understanding they were only presenting it for a small group of people at the time, are ideals that now everybody is trying to get, right? I mean, the whole purpose of Black Lives Matter and racial injustice is that they want a piece of the American dream and they don't feel that they have it. And that American dream was created by Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, John Adams, these guys who are imperfect. So we should not be canceling them just because they have this huge black spot, because, you know, you could easily go into every one of our lives and find something to cancel all of us. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, everybody I know is a train wreck. So, I mean, like, you know, I think that, you know, this cancel movement has gone a tad too far, you know? So, but, you know, and that's why right now there are liberal commentators and Democratic senators who are calling for the end of cancel culture. And I think there are things like we've already talked about in our last video, you know, Splash Mountain, like that needs to change. You know what I mean? Like that totally makes sense. You know, I mean, there are certain things that should change, but canceling out a big piece of our history because there were people who have black spots, I just don't, or dark spots or whatever you want to call them, that is appropriately
politically correct
these days. Yeah, like just because they weren't perfect, I don't think we should cancel them out. And we shouldn't hide away from the fact that they had, you know, these major flaws, but I don't think we should still lose the ideals that they had, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and I think what you make also ties into, again, representation on Broadway and in film, in arts, right? For Black people and people of color. It is also very important that the only representation there is not just them being seen as slaves, them being, you know, having violence upon them, things like that. And so having this play acknowledges, and I know Ashley, we were talking about a lot of the representation and the ropes and representing the ships. They're acknowledging it, even if in subtle messages, that yes, slavery was definitely happening and live and well, and this country was built on the backs of slaves and slavery. But I think it's important that there are plays and movies that everyone can watch and that little kids can look at and go, that's me. And I can't even remotely relate to the depths that people feel that because of my entitlement, but just the few times that I've had to dress up just as a white female character and have a little girl run up to me and say, I saw you, and look, I'm you, and stuff like that. Even just as a fellow redhead, you know, silly stuff like that. You see how important representation is. And I think that it's so important that people have things like Hamilton like that, and it means more than, like you said, just something that now should be canceled due to not emphasizing perhaps on the slavery and things like that.
That's cool, Kirsten. That's a really cool perspective, because you as a cosplayer, you do a lot of charities, a lot of events where you go to places and you have direct interaction with people who see you from an audience perspective, and you get to see that light up in their face, where in movies and even in plays, them up on stage or on a screen, they can't see the reaction of the audience who are lighting up from something that they are seeing that they can connect with. And I remember hearing stories when, just kind of wrapping this up, what was that movie? The one that I fell asleep in, the black superhero.
Oh no, sorry.
Black Panther.
Black Panther?
Black Panther.
What is wrong with you?
Everyone loves that movie.
How do you, that was like one of the best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You
Really?
fell asleep.
Anyway,
You haven't even gone back to watch it. What the heck is wrong with you?
I was on a date. I fell asleep.
You're
halfway through it.
racist.
And I didn't care. Anyway, once the rhinos came in at the end, I was done. Anyway, but even the trailer coming out, a lot of celebrities and people that I follow and watch who have a platform were talking about how when they saw that trailer, when that movie came out, they finally were able to see them on screen. I knew some other characters when Wonder Woman first came out, and they were like, and before Captain Marvel, that's a whole other conversation, but even Wonder Woman, like, finally this is me on screen. And for so many years people have not been, or I mean forever, no one's been able to say that for a lot of different cultures or races or sexes. I guess there's not too many sexes, but you know, I don't know. I'm looking forward to there being a big movie with a white superhero that I can relate to, and then that day comes, I will celebrate it. Sorry, that was or unprofessional is the word. Anyway, I'm being sarcastic. I think that's really cool. And Kirsten, you do with what you do in cosplaying and with different groups, that you're able to see that personally. That's really cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. And this does a really good job of people seeing themselves in these heroes of our nation. And like you said, Josh, especially how we just came through the 4th of July season a couple weeks ago, and my heart broke for all the people that were pushing all this anti 4th of July, anti-Independence Day, because they didn't feel like their rights were met by these founding fathers and everything. I'm like, okay, I get that you don't feel like you enjoy the same rights that all of us do as Caucasians in this country, but you have to respect that even though they were flawed and imperfect and sometimes not great men, they did a great work in establishing this country. And if it wasn't for the things that they did, you wouldn't have the right to protest in the streets and to tear down statues and to graffiti things, which you don't really have the right to do, but to do those things without
back to the head crushing on you.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm talking about the protesting. I'm all for a lot of protesting. It's really great, but I'm saying, but be careful where you're like, if it wasn't for these founding fathers, you wouldn't have a stance to be at right now. And yes, it's ridiculous how long it's taken for us to be awakened to some of these Black Lives Matters issues, that even though they were liberated so long ago or emancipated, and then they were, they had their rights to vote and everything not too long ago, and that we're still being treated, unequally from Caucasians. Yes, it's taking a long time. It's an embarrassing amount of time, and it's a horrific amount of time. But things are happening now that I don't think it should take away from the things, this spirit of what these men were trying to do back then that it started. So I know that's my thoughts. I had a big blog on it.
Yeah, and just to comment on that though, I mean, you have to understand, like, I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and you can't understand why, like you said, well, you have to respect this or that, and you really don't. I mean, if you're somebody who feels like this country has not that you don't have the rights that this country professes, then I can understand why you would not think like, no, I do not have to respect these men who were clearly doing this for white males who owned property. That's who they wanted to have this stuff. I mean, ultimately, it was not originally life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was life, liberty, and property. They wanted property owners to be the ones to be able to make all the decisions. So, but I think the brilliance of the founding fathers was that, like, Thomas Jefferson had written these papers where he said every generation should just throw the Constitution out and write a new one, because every generation is going to need to do new different things. So they understood that like things were going to change over time, right? And even though that there are ideals in the Constitution that are unchanging, within the framework of our society, we can change them, right? And so I think it's great that we're having the conversations now.
I agree.
And that, like, if anything has come from this, I feel like I'm having more in-depth conversations about race than I ever had in my life. in the last year or two. And I think that is a great thing, because I think that's probably part of the reason why none of these issues have ever been really resolved, because nobody's really been able to have the conversation. And so now they are. But also the other thing is you can cancel all the things you want. If it doesn't result in systemic change, then it's all for nothing. So what we should, if everybody wants to talk about, let's cancel 4th of July, let's cancel Christmas and community and office and Splash Mountain, that's great. You can put Princess and the Frog and shoot me down a water thing, but that's not going to change, what's happening.
It's not what's being asked. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What we're talking about is systemic change that needs to happen, and I'm all for it. Let's make sure. I mean, I think everybody should have those ideals. So
I agree with that. I think my point is just that I don't think that it should be an aspect of something where I should feel shamed, and I wasn't, but where I should feel ashamed, like where it felt like if someone posted Happy 4th of July or Happy Independence Day or pictures of them with their families shooting off fireworks or something, like, oh, they're politically or racially insensitive because blacks don't feel those exact same freedoms that white people.
I never felt that. I'm just saying that
when I on 4th of July, I didn't feel like people were being attacked, but there was this big drastic switch or flip of people's feelings about Independence Day, and I was like, well, hang on. And I felt like there were certain aspects of this big cancel culture push and this big woke movement that we're all like, okay, let's just not just attack everything. You can feel, not you, Josh, I'm saying people can feel how they feel about the founding fathers. I feel the way I feel about the founding fathers, and that might not be fair because I'm white. I get that. That's why it's important to have these discussions. I don't think it's appropriate to just completely discard them as great men because they were slave owners, because like you said, that was society, that was their culture, that's the way the world was at the time, and it's horrible. But I think that their ideals and their passions and what they were trying to do was the first step to get where we are to have this conversation now. You couldn't have this conversation back in the 1700s. So I think it's taken an embarrassing amount of time to get there, but I think we're getting there. But it did start back then in those discussions.
I guess I just didn't take the 4th of July, the cancel 4th of July or whatever you want to call it situation. I didn't take that as like a forever thing. I took it as just as another form of protest. Like people were just like, this 4th of July, I'm not going to celebrate it because I don't feel like America is where it needs to be.
And that's fine.
And so I just said, okay. And I never ever got a sense of anybody. I mean, I personally, I'm pretty active on social media, and I had never got this. I never had anybody post anything on any of the like stuff that I would have put
on your
up,
post, yeah,
fireworks, saying anything about I was being insensitive or anything like that. I think that you have every right, and I think anyone would say you have every right to feel about the founding fathers and the 4th of July the way it is, but it's built on a prism of what your life experience is, and someone else's life experience is different. And so they feel it differently. So, I mean, the more like, I think that the more honest conversations we can have that don't devolve into crazy yelling and crazy stuff on social media and like, everybody going gangbusters on somebody, trying to destroy them and silence them, the better. That way we can actually come to, I mean, I appreciate having good conversations with anybody of any opinion, even though some of them I don't agree with, just so I can understand, like, it helps me better shape my understanding of my own beliefs to hear other people's beliefs, because
perspectives too.
Like I almost want to hear the best argument from the other side, so that it'll either change my argument, it'll either change my opinion, or it'll sharpen my arguments against it for my own opinion.
If your beliefs are never challenged, how can you learn and grow?
Right, exactly. So, just keep your conversations good. I don't know.
Well,
yay.
In my conversation, in my life experience, Hamilton was great, but not the greatest musical of all time by a long shot.
We've changed him from to great. So that's good. See, you're hearing our opinions, and now you're saying it's
I
great.
liked it. I've said from the
You
beginning I
started-
liked it.
I want everybody to go back to probably minute 47 because it goes forever. But it felt like the beginning of this, and just listen to Tim go. It was kind of, you know.
As
It
a
was like the first thing
musical,
you said.
yeah, the music was fine. I enjoyed it, but there were certain themes and certain aspects that I loved. I said that, and certain portrayals in certain moments that were really cool, the way they were done on stage. But it's not the greatest of all time, and I'm sorry, Lin-Manuel is not the greatest performer of all time. An incredibly talented, beautiful, a visionary man who has a lot to say about a very important movement right now. I believe that very much. He is someone that people should look up to as a hero to them, not necessarily Hamilton as presented in this show. Does that make sense? Anyway, so there's your props for Hamilton, or for Lin-Manuel. Does anyone else have any other thoughts? I wanted to talk about the ending, but we can move on, because I thought the ending where she comes out and looks at the audience and screams or gasps was really weird.
I just want to give props to the costume and how it evolved and how they were able to use the costume and the display and how they set up everyone to give you that it's obviously a time change. I loved how they were able to do that progression through the costumes.
I'll have to revisit. You're talking about how his clothes?
Everyone.
Because half the people are mostly naked throughout the whole thing.
No,
Not
but
naked, but I mean they're wearing their bare, they're not wearing the jackets and stuff. Because
Right.
can you
The
imagine
main characters did though.
Yeah.
You notice? Yeah.
Right.
And they evolved, and it's just beautifully done how that went through.
But also, anybody who's still watching this, I would say that if you've watched Hamilton once, you should go back and watch it again, because, I mean, watching it a second and third time, you pick up so much more than the first time you watched it, because there's just so much going on, and it's hard to, you really have to spend a lot of time focusing on the music to understand what is going on.
Yeah.
And so when you understand what's going on, you can really get a chance to appreciate all of the visual subliminal stuff that you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
So,
And themes. The themes echo throughout the whole thing. And that's what I really appreciate in the writing and in the way the songs are composed. Everything is how musical themes and themes in the characters come back. I mean, that's what a score is in a movie. It's a theme is about a character or a moment or an aspect of the story or something, and it comes back later. And when you hear a certain part of the music in a movie, that connects with an emotion that goes along with something you're supposed to feel later. This one does that very well, where you're pulling things that he's thinking and feeling because of an entire song earlier. The little sting from that song comes up later, and you're like, oh, this drives my emotions with what the story is supposed to be. Really cool how they did that. So anyway, a lot of props for the music. Just, it's great. It's great, Josh. It's great. It's the best musical I've ever seen in my life.
wow.
Anyway, final thoughts, Kirsten? You have anything else you want to say?
I enjoyed it. Like you, I mean, everybody has different flavors and tastes for things. I loved it. I thought it was a masterpiece. Does it take, Wicked's top spot with me or Into the Woods top spot with me? Probably not, but it's definitely an amazing show that I think is well worth watching.
I love that you love Into the Woods. We need to do
I
a
love
review
Into
on that sometime. We definitely do. Josh, you can skip that because you hate musicals, apparently.
So, surprisingly, I still like Greatest Showman better.
Then this?
Greatest Showman.
I buy that. I like Greatest Showman better too. It's
Well,
totally
that's
because this is a
that's because
concert.
you hate- That's because you hate Hamilton. So, I mean,
I hate Hamilton. Worst musical ever.
It did have fantastic choreography. I don't know if we gave enough props to the choreography. That really was astounding dance work and timing, and it
We're
really
talking
was
about
a
Greatest
job well
Showman
done.
or Hamilton?
Hamilton, sorry.
yeah, we're still on. This is a video by Hamilton. Tim, I know
Yes,
you-
yes.
I don't know about the choreography. I need to rewatch stuff. I mean, some of the visuals, like the shootout, the dance, the rewind part, the end part, a lot of the stuff with the turntable is really cool.
hmm There's a lot of representation there, but the timing with dancing to look so tight and on time with each other, that's a lot of work. They did a really good job. It's very clean.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the rap. So crazy. And that's it. That's the last prop I'll give for Lin-Manuel. Hamilton is on stage about 85% of the show. And that's a 2.5 hours. So he's probably on there for 2 hours and 5 minutes, let's say, ish, straight. That is nonstop regurgitation of dialogue and lyrics. That is crazy. So, I mean, huge props to him for being able to pull that off. So I'm not saying he's talentless. That's not what I'm saying. I couldn't do that. But that's an amazing amount of dialogue for him giving all his rap. It's really cool. Anyway, Hamilton was awesome. We're not going to rate it because not really a rating thing. Go watch it and then watch it again watching the wardrobe. Watch it again watching the ropes. Watch it watching the choreography.
The set.
And the set. The one table they bring on and off a couple of times. The set. Anyway, Hamilton.
And then subscribe to our YouTube channel because, I mean, if you've been watching for this long, you clearly like us. So just subscribe. Because, yeah.
Like and subscribe and tell us why I'm wrong about everything I've said about Hamilton.
We all know why.
No. Anyway, all right. Wrapping up. Thanks, Kirsten, for joining us. Thanks, Ashley. Josh, quit talking over me. Thanks for making an appearance.
I've been on like every episode. What are you
Sorry
talking
about your sunburn. All right. Thanks for watching Saints on Cinema. We'll catch you next time, and good night.